Welcome to this edition of MDM's Quicktake. I'm Tom Gale. My guest this week, once again, is Mike Marks of Indian River Consulting Group. Mike, welcome.
Thank you, Tom. It's good to be doing this. It's almost like a routine thing we got going.
We're at the beginning of December, the time of year when everybody is heads down in planning out 2024. And I thought this would be a good time for us to touch on the state of distribution business models. We've been on this ongoing transformation phase in distribution and you can put the timing wherever you want. It's cyclical. It can go back to the early 1990s, perhaps, where the technology really started to change in a lot of different ways and has accelerated. Some people will say, well, it was Amazon business, or some people will say it was digital. And we've gone into this Venturi tube where everything's accelerated. Throw everything in the bucket there. We started to advance a lot of research around sales model transformation, and that morphed into our Shift conference these past 2 years, where we really talked more about an integrated business model transformation and what that looks like for distributors and the components. A long-winded way for me to get to the core of our topic here. I'd like to talk a little bit about what your thoughts are on where we are this year. What is the state of distribution when you take a look at the transformation efforts out there?
To me, it's well past, this is a bunch of crazy ideas that a bunch of seminar speakers and academics are talking about. It's gone mainstream. We're past the early adopters. I mean, we've got some very visible, large global public companies that have been making some significant and public changes in terms of embracing this. But the other thing is that, thinking about business models, I'm working with a plumbing distributor that's probably hoping this year to get to $50 million in revenue. So I would consider this a small, it's a lifestyle business. The owner of the capital is the president, and they're extremely innovative. They're sharing facilities with non-competing distributors, get geographical expansion. They now have 3 inside sales reps for every outside sales rep. They've really embraced digital and culture. And I mean, so you're seeing these things. But the thing that's interesting to me, other than the big public ones that are probably worth marking out to people, most people that are involved in this thing are being very secretive about it. It's kind of like, I'm doing this for my competitive advantage. And I would say there's still the bulk, I would say maybe the majority, not a super majority, but the majority of distributors, both big public and smaller, are all into sort of this complacency and incrementalism. If we can get 5% growth this year, that's going to be great. And the big companies, they're doing it all with acquisitions, because they're when you get a big chunk of share in a market, your growth rate always reverts to the mean gross domestic product. There's nothing you can do to help. If I own 100% of the market, I'm going to grow at GDP. So there's nothing to take anything from. So they have to do all this with acquisitions. And what you're seeing is that a lot of people are just kind of poking along and thinking every day's Groundhog Day, and I sell service with excellent people. And I mean, I think that's wonderful, because in my mind, they're dead man walking. There's so many things that are going on, and you can take any aspect that we talked about at Shift, and you can find a dozen companies. Many of them are talking, non-competitors are talking to each other because they met each other, and they're experimenting on receivables, on order to cash, on quote to order, and thinking about all these things and innovations. You're just seeing it. Everybody's doing something, not everybody, but it's not the isolated deal where this is going mainstream. And so I think I go back to what the Bulio brothers talked about, that you guys actually reported on, that things are going to be a little bit soft in 24, but this is the year you definitely don't want to hunker down and be a turtle, right? Because this is when you need to be making some of these bets and make these investments so that you can really kick some butt in 25. I think the industry we're out of shock, we're out of fear. We're right into acceptance, and distributors are really good at just, all right, forget all this theory stuff. How do I get it on the ground and work? And there's people that are working. So, I mean, I'm very optimistic about the industry. And the folks that aren't doing it will just be acquisition targets.
I would characterize 2023 as a year of traction, where in the previous few years, either distributors were holding on for dear life because of growth rates and just trying to manage sales and growth as well as possible and optimize that as much as possible. I think this year there's been a lot more investment, not only in technology, but I think in some of the innovation strategies and pilots, and the people at the front end of this are doing concept pilots in AI, for example, and figuring out ways to integrate that into their processes and operations. Where I think and moving into 2024, and at one level this isn't new, but just as the first wave of transformation was around digital omni-channel, a lot of people have built that out as a core competitive differentiator, increasingly table stakes for most distributors today. Where I think the real competitive advantage is being made is in the data analytics piece. I think this is the next wave. And again, I've been saying this for 5 years in a lot of ways, but I do believe that this past year has seen a lot more momentum. And I think some of our research and our surveys have borne that out. The final piece here is around that culture, team, and talent element. And again, I think it's been such a struggle the past few years that it's now normalizing a bit. As people look at 2024, they're seeing the opportunities. They're starting to develop a more cohesive strategy, including a data strategy, which a lot of people hadn't really had as part of their overall business strategy. So from this distribution model transformation assessment, a more integrated business strategy is what really starting to emerge and differentiate people from those who are still just trying to go out there and sell as much stuff as possible.
The fact that some of this stuff's getting mainstream has also had the impact on, if you just talk about data analytics, distributors were very, very good at data-free discussions and storytelling. Failed salespeople and distribution are black belts. When people start bringing data out, like, why are you calling on this customer? Why are we selling that? We're losing $1,000 a month by having business. The salespeople kind of like shock and awe and didn't believe it, but it's actually changing behavior. I mean, one of the things that really impressed me about Fastenal, and I didn't think about it because, back in the 80s when I was in the electronic semiconductor business, that was an OEM business, which is very different than MRO. And we would typically embed an employee in a large customer to essentially represent us. It was a branch that was actually in the customer facility. And this person would expedite, work it. But the thing that we loved made customers very sticky because they're playing soccer and they're playing baseball and bowling, and they're like a part of the team. And if you look at what Fastenal's done, they've managed, because of what they've done with 100,000 vending machines, they've actually managed to get that work in the MRO business. And to me, that's huge. It changes everything. But if you start thinking about people changing, getting rid of the data-free discussions, I'm being mentored by 23-year-olds. And they're Gen Zs. And so I'm giving advice to people and they're mentoring me and they're pointing out what a curmudgeon and how goofy I am, which is not entirely fun. But if you start thinking of what some of these distributors have done in terms of really how do you embrace the Gen Z, and they come in and the stereotypes are all wrong, just like the stereotypes on baby boomers are wrong. People are getting involved. It's not just the technology and the executive leadership, but this is actually getting on the ground. And that to me is, once people are engaged, and they know what's in it for them, and that's what a lot of this stuff's doing, and the salesperson's on a commission can make more money, all of a sudden they're your new best friend.
If I take what you're saying, I think 2024 is going to be a year of culture transformation for many companies. We're forecasting 2024 for low growth across distribution sectors, and some are going to be better than others. When I look out at the year and at what the key differentiators that are going to be out there, I think it is the companies that are taking the time to invest both on the data side as well as the people side. Those are going to be the two areas that are really going to support people in executing on their strategy in this next year. What's your thoughts?
I think you're absolutely on the money. If you think about global industrial in motion that you mentioned, and especially Fastenal, what you're seeing companies that are driven by strategy. They're analytically led and strategically driven. And that's a very precise use of the terms. You can change the executives in any of these companies and the strategy stays the same. So many of these big companies, it's whoever's the king, right? And he's got his whole ideas and everybody's going to line up and do what the king says, kiss my ring, don't get my finger wet. But I think you're going to see more and more companies being strategy driven. I mean, it really makes a difference. And the thing is, it's widespread. It's something that wasn't ever taught in school, even if you got an MBA until very, very recently. Strategy's not that tricky. I mean, it's all out there. It used to be, they want to keep a secret, write a book about it and put it in a public library. Now you put it on the internet. Just go ask ChatGPT about strategy, and an hour later, you're going to be able to have a fine-tuned strategy, at least in terms of knowing what the work is for your own company. It ain't rocket science. And that to me is one of the big differences, is that people are going to be strategy driven rather than at the end of the month, I'm happy or sad, but I'm never any smarter. We're just pushing transactions as fast as we can.
With that, Mike, I think I'm done for the day.
Well, I think I'm not done for the day because we just unloaded all of our Christmas stuff from the storage unit. So I'm working on my honey-do list, Tom. So, and I'm sure a lot of people listening to this are in the same situation I am. You know, we always thought it slowed down over the holidays. It doesn't. We just put 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to think about holiday cards and all the rest of it quite yet. But I'm one of those people that I'm not really crazy about seeing the Christmas decorations out well before Thanksgiving. I think there ought to be some sort of a boundary there. Have a great week.
Take care, man. Say hi to everybody at MDM for me.